On this episode of Business is Personal, I'm sitting down with Kerem Cengiz, who is the Regional Managing Director of LWK and Partners. They're an architectural firm and they're behind some of the best architecture in Dubai. We're going to be talking about intelligent cities and what goes into them and how architecture is changing the game in cities just like Dubai. Also, if you haven't connected with me yet, connect with me on LinkedIn at Dr. Corey Block. Do you feel disconnected at work? Are you feeling exhausted? Almost like you hate your job and secretly, maybe your boss too? This is Business is Personal, a blueprint to discovering and creating meaning at work in collaboration with Smashy TV, a live streaming service in the Middle East for the driven, the dreamers, and the doers. I'm really excited to be here with Kerem Cengiz. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It's amazing. Who is Regional Managing Director of LWK and Partners. An architectural firm, which is known all over the world. You have like 12 different global offices, is that right?
That's right.
Amazing. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
As you just said, I'm the Managing Director of LWK and Partners. We're the 31st largest architectural practice in the world. We established here in the Middle East about 3.5 years ago, and we're doing some really exciting work. A lot of technology-driven things, a lot of AI-driven work. Wow. But also some really interesting cultural and civic projects as well.
Very cool. Like we were talking just earlier about intelligent cities and what goes into intelligent cities. And as an architect, I would love to hear your top 3 or your priorities when we're talking about the design of an intelligent city for the future.
Well, I mean, smart cities, intelligent cities, they've been really in the news over the last 4 or 5 years. You know, I mean, Dubai is moving in that direction heavily. It's already quite smart in many respects. I mean, a lot of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, paying your DWA bill, paying your fines on your traffic, all that stuff is through smart apps.
You have those too, hey?
We all have them. And so in terms of how we're living our lives, Dubai is actually quite ahead of the curve. But is the city fully intelligent? Not yet. And I think one of the things that we are, as a business, trying to understand is how we start from a grassroots level. Because I think when we talk about intelligent cities, it's the macro.
Right.
And that's great.
But we're counting on you, like we as a city, we're counting on the architects of the world to dream this stuff up. So tell us what we're looking for. Like, what am I looking at in the next few years in terms of intelligent city?
Look, the reality is that for most of us, the stuff that makes a city operate is already happening.
Right.
The stuff that's going to make our daily lives even better is the stuff that starts at home.
Sure.
Because apart from being in the office, we spend a lot of time at home.
Right.
And so I think we're going to see a big transition into smart living, the automation of the home space and how that transitions into the phone. That smart we take around with us wherever you go, whether it be in the workplace or in the social environment, or just walking along a beach. Or
this is something that you guys are doing some work in this too, home automation, right?
We are. Absolutely.
It's hardware, isn't it?
It's the hardware that we're looking at, and also the software behind it and the intelligence behind it. So as a business, we sit within a conglomerate of other businesses, and within the divisions we have a business that's looking at digital transformation, which is actually digitizing the whole environment and having a digital twin.
It's funny you should say it. I just published my latest article on Forbes is the 12 reasons why your digital transformation will fail. Oh. Yeah. I'm going to share that with you after the show.
I need that.
Yeah, we're going to have some chat about that.
Sure.
But do you envision like the individual home or the family home being more of a node of the city than in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, when we're looking at the precept of an intelligent city, it's how we're interconnected. And, you know, the interconnectivity is very much our own decision. Remember, we live our lives through our own choices. So how we decide to interact with the city at large should still remain in our control. However, if we look at the work that we're looking at, where it's the home automation of all the activities that we do in the home, whether it be controlling the temperature, controlling the lighting, the warmth, the coolness of that lighting, the sound, everything, the curtains, the doors, even robots that cook our meals if we want them. I mean, a lot of us don't, but some people do. Those are things that we can control. How our homes then link into a community. And I think coming out of a pandemic, that's something that a lot of, particularly the government agencies are very interested in, how we monitor emergency. Is something that would be managed by the community management system that we would plug into, and we actually create the platforms for those. And those then would connect as a series of interconnected communities that would then link up to a citywide connectivity.
I like my home, the home that I'm living in now is fairly intelligent, right? We have all of the heating and cooling, like you say, the electricity, the lights come on and off at certain times, the temperature changes at certain times. All of our curtains are awning, everything is all
Right, you're ahead of the curve, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. All of our sound is integrated. We've got solar on the roof, and we're not quite at the place where we're feeding power back into the grid yet, but we're not that far off. And I think, personally, I feel like my home is definitely a node of the city. As the city is growing and becoming more automated and becoming more intelligent, my home is also growing and becoming more automated and more intelligent. I think that's normal. What do you see like as the next steps in let's say not commercial but citywide architecture? What changes can we expect?
I think the big change has to come at governmental level. Like any substantive change, as individuals we can make our own contributions, and we tend to make those contributions because it benefits ourselves individually. But the transformation of a city has to be done at a strategic level, at that macro level. Yeah. That says what is the strategic direction for our nation, for our cities, for our communities, and then the individuals within those communities. And so I think a lot of countries, a lot of nations are beginning to ask those questions. I mean, for example, China has a very specific way it's set up, so it can implement those things in a very holistic manner across a lot of different cities, and they're also building lots of cities from the ground up.
That's right.
And so for them, the challenges are a little less. I mean, their challenges are different in terms of its scale.
Sure.
But in terms of getting in early and integrating it, they're ahead of the curve.
Right.
For us, for example, in Dubai, the question is, okay, we have quite a developed environment. How do we make this already existing infrastructure retrograde or retrofitted back to make it smart? And so to make our environments fully smart, we have to say, do we invest fully into digitizing the whole existing housing stock or the residential stock, or the commercial stock, the malls, everything?
Right.
Or do we say we draw a line here, we retrofit them to a certain extent, where we get the key metrics that we need, and we manage, and then everything new we do like this? Right. That question hasn't yet been answered. But there's obviously an interest. I mean, you were talking earlier about Museum of the Future. Yeah. That's certainly a showcase to how things can be done. What needs we now need that citywide or national roadmap that will say, okay, these are the steps and this is the investment, because it's all about investment.
No, it's true.
At the end of the day.
And I think it's an interesting showpiece, the Museum of the Future, because there's a lot of comments one way or the other, whether it's a beautiful design or an interesting design. What I think is most important about it is that it definitely does show the world this can be done.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, setting aside the architecture itself, which has attracted a lot of feedback, and certainly the interiors of the museum are fantastically arranged, and the museographers and curators are to be really complimented. I think what's really important is that in itself is a statement that Dubai wants to be at the forefront of change. Yeah. And I think that goes hand in hand with lots of other things around blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And it's positioning itself into being a tech leader. Yeah. And that's great. Positioning is super important. Making it roll out is the next step.
Right, you have to actually do it.
You have to do it.
Right? You can say, I'm a consultant, right? Yeah. So I claim a lot of things in the beginning, right? But then you have to actually deliver.
Well, that's why we've decided to do that. I mean, as a business, we spend a lot of time designing these environments. We work with engineers and all specialists to say, okay, how do we make this faster, more effective?
What's the project that's been most exciting for you, or fun? Let's say fun. Let's use that as a metric.
Sadly, the project that we've been working on most recently, which is really about creating a future city, we can't talk about because seriously, it's a serious NDA. It's in Saudi. It's a mega important project.
I'll tell you later.
But there we're being asked to ideate. Yeah. So we're not even at the stage where we're designing master plans and creating objects. We're actually saying, what's the idea behind this? And it really goes deeply into understanding how we're going to live as communities in the future, but with a fundamental backbone of technology that drives through that, whether it be through our logistics, or whether it be through communities, or whether it be through technology. That ideation process is really very important. One of the reasons why we invested in actually creating hardware, and we're partners with a company called No that does all home automation and robotics, is that we as consultants, we talk a lot, right?
Yeah,
we're doing
of course.
it right now.
That's right.
But the proof is in the pudding.
That's right. You have to actually deliver it at the end of the day.
So we put our money where our mouth is and says, here's our suite of products.
Yeah.
Come and look at them. Come and use them. We claim and we maintain that our system is the most integrated system that you can have for your home.
Yeah.
And we're talking to governmental, semi-governmental, private agencies that want to engage with this technology, how that could be good for individuals in their homes, how it can be good for communities, how it can be good for the city.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that you start from the very beginning on the ideation and strategy. I've been in strategy for 25 years, but I'm on the organizational side.
Okay.
I don't design buildings. I don't do any interior layouts or anything like that, which is all super physical and interesting to me. I deal with the human parts. But the process is very similar. I get called in to say, hey, listen, we're going to design a company. This kind of company has never existed before. We need the company to be able to do this. What does the organizational design look like? How does the HR structure out? What are the processes that are required to get this done? And I end up doing that organizational architecture. And the ideation process for me has been really fun, especially in the last, I say 5 years, because it's all tuned around the future of work. And the future of cities, and the future of buildings, and what is possible in space. And yeah, it's been really, really exciting. I'm sure you found the same.
Look, I mean, when we're dealing with things at such scale, the ideation process is often very confusing and very convoluted, because
Too many stakeholders, or?
No, not really. I mean, actually, in this case, there's only really one stakeholder. But the issue is they know what they want, but they don't know what really they want. And so the ideation process, a lot of it is discarded.
Right.
So you go through the process. Is this working? Is it fitting right? Is it heading right? No. Okay. Second iteration, third iteration, fourth iteration. And that process is being done at pace. But we're seeing, particularly in Saudi Arabia, we're seeing lots of that happening.
Right.
I mean, you look at NEOM, that's a very good
example.
example.
Of course,
I mean, they're
amazing
launching. Yeah. I mean, you've got Line, you've got Oxagon, you've got this new one, I can't remember what it's called, the one that's in the mountains in NEOM.
Yes, it escapes me.
I know last week. Sorry, mine's gone blank. There's a lot of ideation going on there. Is all of that going to happen? It's unlikely, but some of it will stick. And, and the stuff that will stick will be the one that will be the stuff that is commonly linked together.
Right.
And so you've got Oxagon on the Red Sea, then you've got the Line, you've got this in the mountain. There will be elements in there that are interconnected and have value. Right. And those elements will be the ones that will be adopted.
Well, you can't hit the moon without aiming for the stars, right? So there's definitely a part to play for those of us who are the stargazers and the people who are like Elon Musk, want to conquer Mars, but from an intelligent city standpoint. And so we're constantly saying, this is possible, this is possible, this is possible.
Absolutely.
But from the range of possibilities, we're going to have a restricted view of that as what's actually going to be on the ground.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think one of the most exciting aspects of it is working with that wide group of individuals who are involved. It's not just us. There are people out there that are so much smarter than we are, and you hear them talking, you're like, let me just rewind that back a bit and do that 3 or 4 times.
I need to hear that again.
I
need to hear that again.
It's a bit tough, but you look, it's super exciting because, as a professional, being challenged and stretched is something that you constantly want. Otherwise, it becomes a very sedentary, repetitive process that you're doing.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, we know with current technology that the design and the delivery of a building is fairly repetitive.
Right.
The architecture changes, the story, the narrative behind it is more specific to each individual project, but the actual technology that you're delivering through is relatively fixed.
The blocks, the MEP,
exactly.
Right?
Well, not just really, literally the building blocks, the materials.
Yes.
So when you're really pulled out of that and said, okay, forget that because we're not there yet.
Right.
But let's think, what's the future city going to be? Then you're in a different, you're almost like being back as being a student, being challenged again.
Okay, so if so much of it is repetitive, how much of your attention do you give to new materials?
Look, that process is always ongoing, and it's actually, we're very lucky because we work in an industry that allows us as a collective to be always appraised of what's happening new. And I think it would be very negative as a business or as an industry if we didn't look at that. And so we participate in lots of different forums where new materials are talked about, they're tested. We try to use them where we can. And that's the challenge, actually. The biggest challenge is that there are all sorts of technologies out there that we could adopt and we can use, and some of them are being used, some of them are not. It's about the stakeholders.
Right, sure.
It's whether the stakeholders have that long vision.
Yeah. Yes.
Do they want to invest now?
Yeah.
Is it about their own brand approach? What does that mean for them? Do they even think about that?
Right.
How do they want to position themselves in the market? And there will always be clients who want to be at the forefront and who want to make sure their brand is always leading the way.
Yeah, sure.
And they will be the early adopters.
Yeah.
And then there's the ones who will sit back and go, is it working? Yeah, it's working, let's go and do it.
I saw a video on my LinkedIn feed for it was a wafer thin biodegradable battery. And I just thought, who is ever going to use that? Like, it's the use case for it. I don't know, like maybe in the future you can pack a bunch of them together, power a phone, and you can throw your phone away and feel good about the environment. But a wafer-thin biodegradable battery. The new materials that are being invented, I think are being invented now faster than they can be implemented.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think so. I mean, look, if we talk about, I mean, we were talking earlier on before the session started that, how do people adopt the new technology? I think you were saying that as a species, we've taken generations and generations and generations to adopt to different methods of communication, interaction, and now social media is changing. It's only been around for 20 years, less, and it's so fast. Yeah. Do we adapt, or is now the whole idea of adapting really not about adapting to what was offered, but adapting to adapting?
Yeah, of course.
Is it a question of just taking and dropping?
Yeah.
What's going to be? That's the question I have no answer for, and you may have a better answer than me. But I think the reality is that when it comes to technology in our sphere, we can't back away from it.
Right, sure.
But at the same time, we have to try to predict what's going to be more, have a longer longevity.
Right.
Because as we know, you can design buildings remotely, but you can't build them remotely.
That's right.
Something needs to build it. It's physical.
Well, the construction industry has changed so much over the last, let's say, 300 years. Okay, so we typically don't have a 300-year-old memory, but actually this machine we've got is 1 million years old. And we've got 1 million years of momentum and best practices in here. And I think one of the best practices, one of the most hopeful best practices that we have is the fact that each and every one of us that's alive today is the product of 10,000 generations of humans that adapted very quickly to whatever the world threw at them. And it might have been famine, flood, feast, war, pestilence, whatever it is. The world threw stuff at them and they were able to adapt really quickly, and we are the last iteration of that design. And I think that there's a lot of hope in that.
I think there is, because the current situation, I think that, having just come out of a particularly challenging few years with the pandemic, and I mean, largely, I think, we're particularly in Dubai, we're sort of moving on, but there's actually a huge proportion of the world that's still living with that challenge, and we mustn't forget that. The issue for us is that we still need to understand how that can be done as a more holistic and more equitable process.
I agree.
And so I think, we're very privileged to sit in a very developed environment where we can have this discussion.
An environment developed by people like you, by the way.
I think developed by all of us. I mean, look, as architects, we only play one role within the whole process.
Well, let me ask you one last question about your role.
Okay.
What do you find most meaningful about your work?
I think that's changed over my career. I think now as a business leader, I think the most meaningful thing is steering the ship in the right direction and making it success. And obviously success is measured in so many different ways.
Sure.
Personally though, it's to see the people within the business growing as individuals.
Right.
and finding their own path,
and
contributing in a way that the business needs them to contribute, also in their own way of them growing.
Right.
And I think that's
so refreshing to hear.
That's really something that we value. And actually, they're all brighter than I am.
Yeah.
I just steer the ship, but they make everything happen. So
that's amazing.
That's better for me.
So with all of the tools and toys and brand new materials and intelligent city design and intelligent hardware for your homes, the thing that gives you the most amount of meaning is the people and their growth and their development.
Look, without them, none of it happens.
I totally agree with you. It's just so good to hear it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Karen. It's been really, really good.
I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Do you feel disconnected at work? Are you feeling exhausted? Almost like you hate your job and secretly maybe your boss too? This is Business is Personal, a blueprint to discovering and creating meaning at work in collaboration with Smashy TV, a live streaming service in the Middle East for the driven, the dreamers, and the doers.